If I have a good session with person A and person B has a similar topic and I have the same exact session with him, it doesn't mean that person B will get the same amount of value.
I really like to see results with them, not only because it's like reflecting back on my work, but also someone comes to me with so much trust and so much hope.
Key element a good coach needs is that he's honest to himself. To make the most out of yourself, you need to have people on 3 different levels in your life.
Your results as a poker player are overrated when it comes to coaching.
Welcome, Jan, to my podcast here. I invited you because I thought it's very nice of you to talk about your journey as a poker coach. And since I know a lot of players who also have the dream of becoming a poker coach one day, I thought you might be the right person to talk to. So can you introduce yourself for the people who might not know you yet?
Hi, my name is Jan. Thanks for letting me be on the podcast. Thanks for the invitation. I'm a Razor Edge coach. I'm a coach for cash games specifically. I have my own course within Razor Edge. Started working with Ben CB and all the Razor Edge family in 2019. Very happy to be part of the team and yeah, never look back basically. Also interesting that you ask about being a poker coach and not being a poker player. So I thought it would be super interesting to make a podcast about that. So yeah, thanks for that. And I'm very curious what's about to come.
What combines our journeys is basically that we both know Ben very well. You work for him. Ben is one of my best or closest friends here in Vienna. That combines us. So I know that you're a good coach. I know Ben's team is a team of crushers. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a poker player first? Mm-hmm. And then maybe we can talk more about the journey as a poker coach per se.
Yeah, sounds good. I started out as a tournament player back in 2012, I believe. I went to university on the side, like the usual thing here to do in Germany. You study to have an alibi for your poker career, and you are not taking it really too serious. But then poker took off a little bit, and also was way more interesting when you were young and you were kind of a little bit reckless in your future, in your design of your future life. So you gave it a shot. Hopefully, or like thankfully, it worked out for me. Wasn't always the case, but kind of difficult times as well. But somehow I made it here. I started out as a tournament player, and in 2015, I think, I transitioned to cash games. It was because of a side bet that tournament players couldn't really beat mid-stakes cash games, and I was forced to play a lot of hands in one single month. I think I played 200k hands in that month, and I had to prove that I could have a win rate on a 100 and a 200. I proved that. I will never do that again. It was super exhausting. But since then, I was absolutely hooked with cash games, and tournaments went into the background, and I really tried to make the transition to cash games, become the best cash game player I can be, worked with coaches, worked with other players, had a network. And then in 2019, started working with Ben CB and Razor Edge, because Ben was, or the team was kind of curious about cash games and maybe how they can implement that into Razor Edge, which is like the primary source of MTT content, and they wanted to do some cash games as well. They had a little bit, but also they were missing some content or someone who was like, okay, who's doing the online content? Who might be interested in that? And I was like, wow, I would be absolutely hooked to get this chance to make some content about online cash games, because there's so much information out there. And it's so confusing for everyone that I would really like to make a product that is true and honest and good content for a price that is achievable or buyable, I should say, for everyone. That was kind of the goal.
It's quite funny. I was thinking back to my journey. I met Ben through a common friend. We basically clicked instantly. The first time I met Ben, he didn't want to tell me what he does for a living. We had a chat and, Ben looks like a normal person, right? Like me and you. I didn't know what he was doing, but since we got along so well, he said, you know what? I really like you. Come over tomorrow and I show you what I'm doing for a living, right? And I'm like, all right. So he sent me his address, right? He lives in one of the best places in Vienna. I go over there. I'm shocked by this apartment. When we met like a few years ago, right? He was in his mid-20s or something when we met. I was like, how can a mid-20-year-old man live in such an apartment? That's crazy, right? And he said, yeah, like as a poker player, if you're successful, you can afford things like that. And I'm like, poker player? What is that, right? I never heard about poker. So I was curious and I asked Ben to teach me that. And he taught me the absolute basics. But as you said, right, I got hooked. And I started with MTTs myself. And every time I had a question, I, of course, went to Ben. He answered it to me. I had probably the most noob questions ever, right? But he was patient enough to answer all of them. And since I started to coach people, because I love poker, but at some point I felt it was a little bit too isolating for me, sitting at home and stuff like that. And I need to work with people. I need to talk to people. I need to hear the stories. I'm someone who needs to connect with other humans. At this point, when I started to coach people, I realized that I want to continue playing poker. And the best way of doing it is to switch to cash games. Because as a cash game player, you have the big advantage to start your session, end your session whenever you want.
True.
And I think that is so underrated, because I think, honestly, that is really, really huge. Because one of the downsides that I always saw as an MTT player was that you have to play at this time if you want to play the best tournaments. You basically play the whole night. The sleep rhythm is messed up.
Yeah, so lose 90% of your sessions as well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So as a cash game player, that is what I find so fascinating. I decide when I play, and not the tournaments decide when I play. And that for me was even more special than continuing to play MTTs. And what I'm doing right now is I'm playing cash games. I switched to cash games too, just because of time reasons. But of course, as you already know, my biggest passion is coaching people and creating content like this here right now. Let's talk about your coaching journey, because you said you got in touch with Ben, you started creating the course. But first of all, how did you create the course? Because cash game is such a big topic, right?
Yeah.
So what were the core ideas, and how did Ben help you maybe in that regard?
So the course came out in 2021, and we started the idea, I think, a little bit over a year before that. So just brainstorming, we had the idea, we had maybe the chance to do that, how we really don't want to do that. And there was already a little course in the repertoire of Raise Your Edge, which was the elementary course, but we could just update that. And instead of just updating it, we were looking at it, we said, okay, come on, we are going to do everything new, everything with up-to-date content from today, new preflop ranges, the 3-bet only approach, all the stuff that's important. And the goal was to make it understandable and digestible for the casual NL2 player or NL5 player who just wants to get a little bit better than the competition, but also for an ambitious, maybe NL25, NL50 player who is looking to rise through the mid stakes and make the way to a professional poker player. So it has to be a little bit of everything in there. We started with very basic things like opening ranges, like sizings for openings, but also very complex things, such as going through PioSolver and find out frequency for big blind check raises and making rules out of it. The overall goal, however, and it didn't really matter how complicated it could be at the end, was to keep it as simple as possible, because simple strategies and simplifications coming out of those complex solver tools are the number one reason or the number one goal for your win rate, or the number one thing you should look at. If you're looking at PioSolver and have a very complex strategy and you try to implement that and copy paste what a solver says, you're not going to go anywhere. You just will waste your time. So the goal was to pick all the complex stuff and make it easy for everyone and make easy rules. We made like a really easy set of rules that is very close to a solver output, but it made like so easy that you're not losing EV and still play a good strategy, because this is where all the confidence comes from. And this is where the NL10 player is like, oh, I understand that. That makes totally sense. And the NL50 player is like, I get where that comes from. That's a simplification from maybe a difficult spot out of a solver. I can use that for my game too. So yeah, this was kind of the goal, to make something for everyone, but also something which is not like cheap content out of the internet that you can just Google. So it has to be something really, really good, really solid, but also really basic. That was the goal. In the end, we made a really, really good product, I think.
Coming back to what happens afterwards, after you created the course, you started to get coaching clients, right?
I had coaching clients before. Like I started working with RYE in 2019. So yeah, with all the marketing and all the introduction and stuff like that, I had private coaching like during all this time. And then in 2021, obviously it went through the roof a little bit. So we had to do a little bit of structuring and scheduling, because I cannot take like as many clients at one time, because if I work with someone, it has to click, as you said before, it has to click. And also I want to make sure that I can be the best coach possible for them. And that is not going to work out if I have like, I don't know, 10 clients and I have coachings like 3 times a day, because they're intense, they are a lot of work. I want to really concentrate on the client, because everyone has different needs, different leagues, different structures for coachings and all that stuff. So this won't work out. So I had to structure and take my time for all these students. I couldn't make it to everyone in that time, but yeah, I tried my best to like give everyone a spot and give everyone a chance. But yeah, then it started out with like private coachings and all that stuff.
What would you recommend to someone who plays poker maybe on a very good level, mid stakes, high stakes, have solid winnings for a long period of time and says, I think it's time to coach. I think I want to have my very first client. What would you say?
So your results as a poker player are overrated, I think, when it comes to coaching, because someone who is not as good as the game can be a great coach, and someone who is crazy good at the game can be a horrible coach, I think. So this is two different things, rather. I had coachings also from players who were like insanely good players, but their coachings were not that great because they were more like clicking through a solver for 90 minutes, explaining difficult things, frequencies, and not really focusing on the why and on making it easy to execute strategies. And after 90 minutes, oftentimes I was sitting there, I was like, whew, this was intense. And then when I'm asking myself, okay, what did I learn? That was the big hole, right? And then I had coaching sessions from players who were like playing a lot lower, and they had really good rules or really good explanations for it. So it's not really like only the one or only the other. Obviously, if you are a very good and experienced high stakes poker player or even mid stakes poker player, you have the chance to explain it to lower stakes players because about the amount of knowledge you already have, obviously. But it's also about like how do you bring it to people? How do you make them understand? And it's not like I'm a great poker player, so I'm automatically a great coach. This won't work. The thing that I studied at German university to become a teacher, because I really like the idea of teaching and to bring information to people in an easy way. What I did not like about university, that you don't learn how to be a good teacher there, but you learn to be an expert in your field. That was the case that really was a little bit annoying. And when I make my poker coaching, so when I create the sessions, I can do my thing and what I think is best, but also using the strategies I learned there a little bit to explain things in a way that it's always understandable. Like my coaching sessions are never clicking to a solver for 90 minutes and explaining frequencies like that, but rather going with a specific question into a solver and then looking, okay, what is the program or what is the solver telling us? What is it's revealing, and how can we make a rule out of that we can implement that in game without ever looking back at the solution, right? So this would be the biggest thing for me, or this is how I would structure my coaching sessions rather.
What I recommend people who want to start out is, as you said correctly, right, to find people on a lower level who they can teach because they've been there too. I agree with what you said, that even if someone is a super good poker player, that doesn't mean that he's a good coach. I 100% agree. But the question that I ask myself, and that also a lot of poker players that I work with ask themselves, is how can I make sure that my coaching has good quality? Because I think you can only survive as a coach long-term if what you teach is good quality.
Yes.
So let me give you my take on this first, right? Before you go. I was thinking that you start with people on a lower level since you've been there. And I think everything you experience yourself is always easier to teach because you understand where they're coming from. You understand their struggles. You understand their thinking patterns. So it's quite easy to teach someone. But I think the key element a good coach needs is that he's honest to himself, that he questions himself. Because that's something I learned from coaching a lot of people throughout my life already, is that if I have a good session with person A and person B has a similar topic and I have the same exact session with him, it doesn't mean that person B will get the same amount of value.
Oh, no.
Even though person A got huge value from it, we have to adjust to the certain person. And that is what makes coaching for me especially so interesting and so special, because I know that I have to find different words, different solutions for each individual. And then if I do it, I see the person getting results. So sometimes you see within a very short period of time, if your idea about this person or your wordings or your explanations for this specific type of player works. And that is extremely rewarding.
Yeah, it's a super rewarding job. So if the people get results, they come back to you after a few weeks, after a month, and they show you these crazy graphs, and they just look great and they feel great. They move up in stakes, and they're like, "Coach, I feel so confident with all the stuff we did." That's the greatest feeling in the world, obviously. I can relate to that. There's no one fits all. You cannot prepare a session on a certain theory topic and be like, "Okay, this is working for everyone," because everyone has like different questions, also have different misunderstandings, and everyone has a different background where they're coming from. As a coach, even if you are a professional poker coach, it's not only technical. It's not only like I can talk about strategies and all. I'm also talking about mindset related stuff, even though I'm nowhere close to be a good mindset coach. But when people come to me with like huge financial pressure because they have been a pro player and it's not going well, bankroll shrinks and all that stuff, we have to target this as well. Or they're like, okay, I come from huge losses, I got huge bad beats. They come back to me, show me the session, and we have to work it out. Like, okay, this was a big hit for you, but we can actually check if you did anything wrong or if it's just maybe tilt, mindset related, stuff like that. Coaching is way more, like a poker coach is way more than just the technical side. It's also a lot about empathy, a lot about emotions, and really, yeah, trying to see the person behind the client, so to speak. I'm always also telling stories from my past because, as you said, it's so huge when you experienced a leak or a difficulty in your past and you can share that with your client, and then you can say, I felt the same way. My solutions were, or what worked for me was A, B, C, D. Pick one that maybe works for you as well. If you are making an image out of that, you could say as a coach, you want to take someone from point A to point B, and that in a very quick fashion, because if he goes alone, he would be pretty slow. If he goes with you, it's way much faster, right? But you're not waiting on point B and be like, okay, come over here, it's here. You're basically going there into point A, taking him by the hand and going with him together, right? That's kind of the goal of coaching, or this is kind of how I imagine it, and it's a very true.
I say the same. Funny that you say this. I always say the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you take the journey together, basically. And it's also like I'm a very competitive person. I think poker players always are kind of competitive, but when it comes to coaching, I am too. So my students, I am like, this is my team. These are my boys and girls. I really like to see results with them. Not only because it's like reflecting back on my work, but also someone comes to me with so much trust and so much hope that I really want him to succeed, right? He's part of the team. I really want this, right? So yeah, this is kind of how I do it and how I feel like this also has an impact of being a good coach or being able to do high quality coaching. There are also coaches who just maybe sometimes just do it for the money, and we're like, yeah, we have a session, I do whatever, a hand review, and then you go do your thing, and if it doesn't work out, it's maybe your fault. So yeah, there's a lot of things around the internet, I think. So yeah, I would really like to, as the course as well, and as the philosophy of Razor Edge as well, do something very true to the player. We really want to make sure that we are putting our heart into this work and into everything Razor Edge is, the courses is, and our private coaching is, to make sure that we just have a good product that way.
It's cool that you said this, because what I was thinking is that you said it's your boys and girls, right? I always say the success of my clients reflects my success, or is my success, basically. Because if they're happy, right, they will say, hey man, this coach is awesome, you should definitely work with him. And I think that is the best marketing that you can have.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I think the coaches who just charge for the money, or like who just do it for the money, they won't be really successful long term.
Yeah, I think that's super true.
Coming back to someone who starts out as a coach. So we said that someone who starts out as a coach, ideally he finds people who play lower limits because he just can share his journey with that person, right? So after he gets the first, let's say, first 5 clients, which is already good, right? If someone starts from scratch. What I would always say is that he always asks for some sort of review, testimonial or something, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you get this too. Some people do it from their own, right? But a lot of times just by asking, people say, oh, of course, you helped me so much, I'm happy to do it. So that's something that I always recommend. And that helps you to attract even more clients. So now the question is, if you want to build a long-term business as a coach, as I said before, you want to always question yourself. Like, is it good? The tactics I used 2 years ago, do they still work today, right? And especially since poker is changing so fast, sometimes you need to always be up to date. So how do you make sure that you're always up to date with the newest strategies, with the latest trends, with also maybe the best coaching strategies and techniques? How do you do it?
Yeah, by playing a lot. And when it comes to poker techniques, I'm still playing a lot. I'm also trying to get better every day. I'm also still trying to move up in stakes even further. I think the highest I've played is like 50, 100 live and maybe 25, 50 online, but not really as a regular, but maybe more than taking shots, because obviously in a 5K online is like super, super tough. And also it's like on different sites and all that stuff. But I'm still working on myself. I'm still not finished with my journey. And I'm still super hungry to improve as a poker player, which makes me also improve as a coach on the technical side, because I'm constantly working on new strategies and networking with other players, talking to better players, talking to the network basically, and try to become as good as I can. So this is kind of the technical side. When it comes to coaching, it's also about, lots is coming from experience, obviously, because the more clients you get, the more experience you get. Every coaching session I think I have, and also if it's kind of, it's not really the same topics, but it's similar to each other, it gets closer to each other. Every time, or like almost every time, I still learn something myself. Because if you look at different situations and be like, okay, there are new ideas, there's new input. So there's also, what should I call it? Accidental input maybe from the clients that want to learn because they ask good questions. And if they ask good question, I'm like, oh, I never thought about this. And maybe this creates an idea, this creates a strategy and all that stuff. So also by coaching, you automatically, the more you do it, the better you will become because of smart questions, because of, developing your strategies and developing, okay, this worked very well because someone said, okay, this clicked really, really hard for me. But also I get coached myself too. And I look up to other coaches. I'm like, okay, how do they do it, right? So what is their approach? And there are good ones, obviously. There are bad ones. So I had some insanely influential coachings in my career, and also some coachings who were like, yeah, cool, but maybe not needed again, really, right? And this goes from mindset over very technical things. I worked, for example, with Steffen Sontheimer a lot, who was a crazy influence in my poker career. He was just blowing my mind constantly in coaching sessions, both technically and also mindset related. And I look up to these people, try to learn as much as I can from them, and then try to be the best coach I can be. That's kind of the goal.
I would add two things to what you said. I 100% agree with what you said. I would add two things. The first one is quite simple, and something that I like to do a lot is to just ask people, not always, but from time to time, how they like the session. At the end, I take like 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes, I'm like, how did you like the session, right? And then I ask for honest feedback. And just because of the feedback, I can learn a lot. I can learn a lot from their feedback. And I instantly try to implement, because it's basically the feedback that I get is like, all right, good input. Let's use it in the next session right away. And the second thing is I have this, I think, from Tai Lopez. I can't remember where I have this from, but he said, if you really want to make the most out of yourself, you need to have people on 3 different levels in your life. The first one, and I think it's perfect for being a coach, a lower level, right? Basically people that you can lift up. You know, as a coach, it would be someone who plays lower stakes than you, someone you can just train and coach and bring to your level. The second one is people on your level. So people who are your friends or people you have a friendly challenge with, right? Who can move up in stakes or who has a better win rate. So people who challenge you on a daily basis. And then you have people on a higher level that coach you basically, right? I also have coaches who coach me, people who give me advice, and people I look up to so they can pull me up to their level. And I think if you have all 3 levels in place, this is the fastest way of growing as a person, as a poker player, but also as a coach.
Yeah, sounds very good. I think I heard about that idea of like the lower level, mid level, and higher level. I think it's for me, I didn't really plan to do that. It kind of happened automatically. Looking back at it, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think I already have that by accident, maybe, but it works really well. And yeah, I couldn't really think of a job, not only as a poker player, but also as a coach that is, giving so much, or this is, doing so much for you. And it's basically becoming a teacher, but you're allowed to do your own thing and your own strategies and to teach the way you think it's best for the client. And also you have like, it helps that you have 1 client at a time and not like 30. And also that they are like way over 18. That helps a lot, obviously. But I think it's so much more rewarding, so much more honest, good, and effective work. That every time I go out of a session, I'm like, man, this was such a good session. And it was so good. I think he took so much away from that. And it's like, okay, this makes my day. Like, always, basically.
The last question before we talk about another topic is how big, like before 2021, before the course with Raise Your Edge came out and stuff like that, before that time, how did you find your coaching clients?
So I started my first coaching, I think it was still for tournaments. And that was basically because I was having kind of good results. And then someone recommended me to someone else and were like, hey, yeah, could you look over some hand histories? Could you try to, yeah, I have a group of people who are just starting out. And I knew some people who were backing some people and had staking groups and all that stuff. And obviously they're looking for cheap solutions to improve their players the fastest, right? So, and if you have no reputation and no real experience as a coach, obviously you start low. I would also recommend as a coach, maybe start for free. Like just post in the Discord, maybe the Raise Your Edge Discord, maybe whatever Discord who are poker players, and be like, hey, I want to look over some hand histories for players below my average level. Send me some over. We have a session for half an hour or something, and then start there. Gain some experience. They will be happy that they get feedback. You will be happy that you get feedback. Nobody has to pay anything, and then start out. So I started out group coaching MTT players, I think, and then made it step by step, like recommendations. So I had a little bit of coaching experience, but not crazy, not a crazy amount when coming to Raise Your Edge. And then obviously when I hit the server of Raise Your Edge and Ben was like, okay, I have 2 cash game channels. I want you to moderate them, to give feedback. Then people were coming to me based on the feedback I gave in those public channels, because I would take my time, maybe once a day, maybe once every 2 days, go through all the channels, analyze hands, give feedback how you can improve not only the way they played their hand, but also that thought process behind it, right? So I tried to make some good rules out of it, keep it simple, keep it easy. And this is where then I got messages like, do you coach maybe? I really like what you wrote there. This sounds simple. Is this your approach to coaching as well? And then I decided, or we decided, to do something like a page for coaching that I can tell them what my approach to this is. Back then also I tried to have these honest thoughts in there, like I'm doing the things my way. This is my way how I do it for the rules, 3-bet only approach, not only the technical side, stuff like that. So I taught them exactly what they get and then went from there. So this is kind of how I got the first clients, was by recommendation first. And then when I was with Raise Your Edge, obviously a little bit of marketing here and there too. I got introduced in a YouTube video, so again a little bit of reach, so to speak. Then it took off basically.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. So I would also do the same. I would probably also start in different Discord channels. There are also some Facebook groups. I know Twitter is very strong. Ben always tells me, like, you have to post on Twitter if you want to be a coach.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh man, I don't have a Twitter account. What?
Yeah, really?
You didn't tell me. What?
I give you the insider tips.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ben is always a big fan of Twitter, or X, how it's called these days. I think you should see which channel works the best for you. And I always was avoiding Twitter too, because I'm like, Instagram is more my favorite channel. But I think each social media platform has its own audience. And you should always go with the channel that you prefer the most, right? Some people also like Discords. I know people who spend a lot of time in different Discord channels reading answers or writing questions themselves. Even better, right? If people are proactive. I would say choose the 2 channels that you like the most and basically focus on them until you get your first 5 clients, then ask for reviews, and then basically start from there or continue from there.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything you want to share? Anything you want to say?
No, I think you asked pretty smart questions. I think we have it all covered up. I'm really happy if they, or if also in coaching sessions, like the client is asking like all the things he really wants to know and is really preparing for them, and you are just not sitting there referring for like 90 minutes, and he's like, oh yeah, thank you, see you next week, bye. So yeah, it's a great thing. I think we covered it all, and hopefully there were some tips in there that makes the new upcoming coach the way a little bit easier and really think it through and not like starting blindly, just trying, okay, I'm a good player, I will be a good coach, but also thinking a little bit about how the content should be structured and how you really want to take it out to people and what will separate you maybe from all the other PIO clickers, right?
100%. I will link down below your Instagram profile. Anything else I should link down below?
No, that's fine. You can also link the coaching page if you want to, if someone wants to have a look. But then I think fine, fair enough. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you want to get in touch with Jan, just click the link down below and you get to his Instagram page or coaching page and you can get in touch with him.